Hello, parents. This is Shellee Howard, founder of College Ready, and our podcast today, Parents, is your teen college ready? Today, I have a wonderful guest. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Shellee. I'm Jeanine Mouchawar, and I'm a parenting coach. I work with moms and dads who have preteens, teens, and young adults, just helping them be their go-to person.
Ah, so great. So we had a little pre-chat, as I always do with my guests, and we realized that we're actually neighbors. So super exciting. Um, let's go ahead and dive in. First question that comes to mind, having four kids of my own, is there why isn't there a book on how to raise a teenager? Like, when you're pregnant and it says this is what you can expect. Like, what am are we missing something as parents?
Oh my gosh, I've asked myself the same question. And I now have three adult children, but when they were in high school, thinking like, where are the resources? Because I just parented kind of intuitively in the younger years. And of course, there were challenges. Parenting is never easy. But when we got to the high school years, I felt like I was not being the effective parent that I wanted to be. And so I would try to, go to speakers or read books. And I remember just always feeling like, well, that's great in theory, but how exactly do I execute that? How do I bring that into my home? How do I do that? And
Mhm.
being really frustrated that there weren't resources out there. And that's actually what motivated me to become a parenting coach is I felt like, you know what? I went to Stanford. I'm an educated woman. Very proud of like really dedicating a lot of my time and energy to helping my kids be productive contributors of society. And I remember just feeling so frustrated, like, where's the help? I need help here. I need assistance. I don't know how to navigate some of these situations. Like, I don't know if this resonates with you, Shellee, but like my daughter was a really good student, but consequently, whenever she was home, she was overwhelmed. She put
Mhm.
a ton of pressure on herself. She had anxiety, she had stress. And I just felt like what I was saying, what I was doing wasn't really helping her move through that the way I wanted it to. Or one of my sons was diagnosed with ADD and a learning disability at a young age. And when we hit the high school years, like his grades started dropping and he started lying and being sneaky and got in with a bad group of kids and not bad, but kids who were vulnerable and they were smoking pot. And I was like, whoa, I'm so out of my league here. Um,
Mhm.
and whatever I was doing wasn't being effective and really helping the way I wanted to. And same with
Mhm.
my youngest, who, was in the middle of COVID and loved his video games and his YouTube shorts. And I kept thinking, you are so lazy, you are so unproductive. But what I was doing wasn't motivating him to do something different. And that's
Mhm.
when I just got so frustrated and ended up going to a program that's based in dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, more of a conscious parenting approach where
Mhm.
we're not permissive, but we're not authoritative. We're somewhere in the middle where we've got some boundaries going on.
Mhm.
And we're also learning to be compassionate for their struggles.
Mhm.
Long-winded answer to your question.
No, it was so perfect because it gave me a really good understanding of your why. A lot of times, we start out as you did in college. And what was your major in college?
Oh gosh, you're gonna laugh. Quantitative economics. At the
Okay.
time, I chose that because math and stats were like easy for me, and I really wanted to spend a lot of time learning art history and psychology classes, and I wanted to go abroad in Florence and all those things. And it was like the major with the fewest number of units. So I could take all the classes I really wanted to take because my parents said, well, we're not paying for your education if you want to be an art history major. So, That's how I ended up on that. And of course, I remember thinking when I learned all this parenting stuff, like, okay, my major in college was completely useless.
Oh
And
no.
all this stuff I'm learning is so much more important. These are like
Mm,
communication skills that we weren't taught. And
mm,
it's just, it's crazy. We should be taught communication skills and there should be more importance on emotional wellness and mental wellness and how to really foster that not just in ourselves but with our kids and in our relationships with them.
right. That's genius. You totally threw me for a loop. Here you're doing this touchy-feely teenager world, and I love teenagers, obviously. And
Mhm.
you went to Stanford, which is any Southern California kid's dream, and you did the quantitative math-minded major, but really you deeply, deeply loved art history.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
brilliant. What a
exactly.
great story. You
Well,
were
and I feel like I kind of use
the
my left side of my brain now. Like I can see what the problem is so clearly and like what a solution could be. Like that math brain works for me. And then the more creative, like compassionate connection type is, what I really love and love showing up like that for my clients. And I think that combination is really helpful to parents in the
Mm.
same situation that I was in.
Oh, it makes so much sense. I love that question because very few of my guests um, are doing what they thought they were going to be doing. And, that's the big debate right now. College, no college. If not college, then what? Or question mark, question mark. So let's go back to what we were talking about before the show. And let's dive in a little bit about who would be somebody who you could help. Maybe talk about a potential client, an ideal client, somebody in case my listeners are like, I don't even know if I need that, right? Like,
Mm.
who would you be able to support and help?
Yeah. Well, I would say if I had to put it into two buckets, there's two kinds of parents who come to me. The first type are parents who they want to be their kids' go-to person. They want to have that open communication and connection. And actually, all parents want this. But the first type are they know they're aware, like, okay, the high school years are going to be challenging. I've heard they're challenging, and I want to make sure I like tee myself up for success. So, some of my clients come when they've got like maybe one kid in ninth or 10th and some younger ones, and they want to learn these skills now so that they know they're guaranteeing they have that connection and closeness for years to come.
Mm,
And I love that. I mean, I wish I was aware of that when my kids were younger. I didn't learn any of these things till my middle one was 17 and the shit hit the fan.
oh,
So I'd say that's my other bucket of clients when you are really worried, really scared. Either your kids are doing something, some risky behavior, or you see that they don't have the coping skills that you're kind of looking ahead and knowing that they need. And so
mm,
you're very worried and scared, and you want some new resources and tools and strategies, new approaches to really help them overcome whatever's stopping them or preventing them from being their best version.
mhm,
And I do have, I think, people who know me. Although I work on Zoom with clients all over the world, my local people who know me, it's because they know like I had a child with ADD, and so they have a similar situation and just know I understand the vulnerabilities of that.
mm, mhm,
So, in the big picture, you want to be your kid's go-to person. You want that open connection, that open communication. You're looking for, ways to be effective, to motivate them to make good choices. And I think one of the number one things I hear is like, I'm just tired of the arguments. Like, why can't they just
mhm,
listen to me? And
mhm.
so we
Oh,
obviously work on that.
for sure. I was on with a client last night I briefly was telling you about, and that they're frustrated. And as you know, firstborn child, they had high hopes and dreams, and the child doesn't have that of themselves. So the parents want it more than the child wants it. And it's very frustrating for them. Are they a candidate for your program?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the challenges that we really face as parents is how to navigate and manage our expectations of our kids. Right? We
Mm,
look at them and we see all of their beautiful potential. But when our conversations are focused on trying to get them to do what we want, or, you know, trying to force them through rules or punishments to get them to what we think is the best version of ourselves, it so often, that just is not effective and it doesn't work. And if anything, it disconnects our kids from us. And so I think the number one strategy that we all have to remember is we got to slow ourselves down and focus on that connection piece
mm,
before we start having conversations around what we want them to stop doing, what we want them to start doing that they're not, fix what they're
mhm.
doing, change what they're doing, any of
Sure.
those sorts of things. And I think that Shelley's so challenging because when they were little, they were automatically connected to us and
Yeah.
agreeable. And so we could jump to telling them what to do and offering our advice. And not only did most of the time they listen, but they were grateful. So we're like, wait, I'm doing the same thing here. Why isn't it working anymore?
Mm,
And it's just recognizing like, oh, wait, my teenager or my child's going through this huge transition. They're now a teen and they need something different from me. They need a different approach. And it got to start with reestablishing that connection and that closeness.
okay. Super helpful. What age, right? Everybody asks me, Shellee, when do I start planning for college, right? So when would be a good age to reach out to you?
Yeah. I mean, I think the best ideal age is when they're preteens, like middle school type of time, so that because that's when they're going through this transition, they're trying to exert their independence, they're naturally trying to separate from you. They start thinking like, I know the answers to everything, you know nothing, mom, right? As
Oh
soon
yeah.
as yes, it's not exactly age specific. I would say when you start noticing that that's happening, it's a great time to say to yourself, gosh, I need to change my approach and my parenting methods because
Mhm.
my child is needing something different from me right now. Now, having
So it's
said that, I also like to say that it's never too late. Again, I started when my daughter was 19 and my son was 17 and my other son was 14. And
Mhm.
it's never too late. Like if you're like me and you want to have this closeness and connection with your kids for many years to come. So they're calling you from college, with what there's, maybe a big win or somebody they meant they're excited about, or maybe something happened and they're scared or they're worried, right? If you want that connection and to be their go-to person so that you're their safety net when they are young adults, right? It's never too late to learn these communication tools and skills, is how I like to think about it.
Yeah, and that resonates, right? I mean, they all mature at different stages, and so there's probably no perfect age. Um, let's talk a little bit about technology, which really seems to be a barrier to communication. I know when my oldest used to play games on the computer, I would get very frustrated on the TV. I would get very frustrated and I would say, "Is your homework done?" And he would say, "Yes." And it was that back to my games and I'm like, "Ah!" But he got great grades and he did all of the stuff. So I didn't have a lot to be disappointed in. Now he's using those same thumb skills to do robotic surgery. So he says, "Mom, see, I was just practicing." Um, is it something, uh, technology, the earbuds, the cell phone, the iPad? Is this something that you touch on in your program that you can actually give parents skills to use when they feel like that's the barrier?
I would say this is probably in the last year, this has been a top three concern that people come to me with. And, you know, I guess my philosophy on this is, especially if we're talking about high school kids, is that the AirPods, the video games, the devices, the social media apps, like they're here to stay. And our opportunity is really trying to help them learn how to self-regulate and monitor their usage. And
Mhm,
so I work with my clients to have conversations with their kids that help them start being aware of when this tech flips.
mm,
And what I mean by that, I mean, think about yourself. Like if you're opening up Instagram and you're scrolling, like maybe at first it's kind of fun and you're seeing pictures of your friends and their kids, right? Maybe you're getting your news. And then all of a sudden there's a point in time that it flips and it starts not feeling so good.
mm,
Right? It starts like if you've got your daughter on TikTok, maybe she's following an influencer who knows how to do their makeup. Like initially it's interesting and they're learning, right?
mm,
And they're fascinated and they're trying it on themselves and it's all exciting. But there comes a point in time that that typically flips and all of a sudden they're feeling bad about themselves and not
mm.
pretty enough, right? And not capable enough. And when we can direct the conversations around that, it helps them recognize when the devices really aren't feeling so good anymore.
Okay.
I love to use the metaphor, like I'm a huge See's candy fan, and I love eating See's candy after dinner, and two pieces are like amazing. But if I have that third, it all of a sudden flips, and I've got a stomach ache, and I don't
Mm,
feel good. Right. So it's the same kind of thing, whether it's social media apps or their phones or their AirPods. For most of us, there comes a point where, and I think we know this, our gut intuition's telling us this as parents, like, ooh, this isn't healthy for you anymore. And so our opportunity here, instead of putting down rules and rewards and punishments, is
mhm.
to help them get an understanding of when that flip happens for them so they can learn to self-regulate their usage. And then
That's
just that little note, I love what you brought up, Shellee, because we want to tell ourselves that sometimes there's something good happening from right?
yeah.
From tech. Like your son ended up using those skills in what he's doing in a career, or, maybe your child's doing it to unwind after the pressures of school for 20 minutes, right? To rest and refuel and re energize. Maybe they're
Sure.
using it to connect with their friends and socialize. Like it's not all bad. And I
Mhm.
think the opportunity here is to have conversations to help our kids create that awareness when it flips. And it doesn't build their self-confidence or self-worth or have any sort of positive attributes to it.
It's interesting. My oldest, he took all social media break for a year. And he said it was the best thing that he's done since he's been an adult. And I said, "Why is that?" I go, "You've never been as a big social media person anyway. Like I would have thought it was your sister." And he says, "Because it's hard not to compare your life with somebody's best day. And no matter what I looked at, I was excited for my friends, but I'm like, but I'm in med school and I'm not
Mhm.
making a lot of money right now. And I'm working
Mhm.
long hours and I'm not seeing those cute girls. Da, 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 da. You know what I mean? And he's just like, Mom, it
Yeah.
just felt real. Like
Mhm.
the choice I made, they look like they're having way more fun than me, which they probably were.
Yeah.
And he's like, "It just felt good just to live my life because I like my life."
Yes. Well, see how he
Interest
did that all on his own. He
Yeah.
recognized that he wasn't feeling good by scrolling and seeing what was going on. And so he self regulated himself, which is amazing. I think most adults have a hard time doing that, let alone a 20 something kid.
Sure.
But I love that example. Like he basically realized that this wasn't adding to his life in any way. It just, if anything, was making him feel worse. And when you think about the principle of motivation, motivation usually comes from an emotion. You're trying to achieve a feeling. And right, so if you want them to be motivated not to use their devices, they have to connect to when it doesn't, to the fact that there are times when it doesn't feel good, and when does it feel good and when doesn't it? And that creates the motivation to self regulate or monitor.
Sure. So, a little point of clarification. Do you help the parent or the child? Do you meet with the child? Do you meet with the parent? Do you meet with both of them? What does that
Yeah.
dynamic look like?
From my years of experience, the most effective way is for parents to be working on these strategies. And so I coach moms and I coach dads,
Okay.
not the kids. And what I found is that most teenagers, not all, but most, when you send them to a coach or a therapist, they tend to feel like, what's wrong with me? Why am I different? And even if they don't feel that, if you think about it, you're asking them to open up to a stranger, that versus like it's a much easier thing for them to open up to you because they feel safer with you and more connected to you than to someone they don't know. So I just found, at least in my own family and with most of my clients, that, hey, if you have a kid who's willing to like go to a life coach or willing to go to a therapist, amazing, jump on that. It can't hurt, it can only help. But
Mhm.
most of the time, the kids aren't willing to do that. And like in my situation, that left it in my hands. Like I've got to learn new parenting approaches. I want to learn how to help my kids navigate these big emotions that they have in high school. They're overwhelmed, they feel pressure, they're stressed, the anxiety, the embarrassment, the humiliation, right? And if I could learn how to help them feel less alone in that and be on their side and be on their team and help them feel like nothing's wrong with them, that just has a tremendous impact on them immediately and
Mhm.
helps give them these tangible life skills that I think we all want our kids to have as they head off and launch after high school.
Right. So, if a parent is curious and they would like more information, how might they contact you?
Oh, thanks for asking, Shellee. The best way is probably just to go directly to my website, which is JanineMouchawar.com. So that's JeAnine, M as in Mary, Ouchawar, complete mouthful.
I'm like, could you have picked a more challenging? Yes.
I
Beautiful,
didn't
though.
pick it. My husband did. And my parents picked my name, but this is what I'm left with. So yes, so if you go to my website, if you want like to learn more right away, it's full of so many resources. I would suggest you hop on my email list. I send parenting tips and strategies, usually twice a week with tangible things you can do right away. There's also, I'm going to be putting a link to this podcast on my website. And if you love your social media apps, I'm on Instagram at Janine.theparentingcoach. And if you want to do like a deeper dive into some of these things I touched on today, I have a Facebook group called Parenting Teens, How to Not Lose Your Shit. So
There
that's
you
really
go.
fun too. So you can find me on Facebook at Jeanine Mouchawar Coaching.
Fantastic. Janine, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a guest on our show.
Thanks for having me, Shellee. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Parents, until next time, make sure that you're having these conversations with your children If it becomes challenging, you know where to go. Thank you so much.